subject. Has Kershaw finally erased those demons?
The way I'll say this is he's exorcised the demons. You can't erase them because all the failures in the postseason in the past did occur. The fact that the Dodgers didn't win the World Series for so many years through Kershaw's prime, which has been arguably, I think you might even win the argument, the greatest prime in the history of baseball for a starting pitcher in the regular season, is because he wasn't that same guy in the playoffs. So that doesn't go away, but it does exorcise the demons. It gets the monkey off his back. He won 2 games in this World Series, whatever you think of pitchers' wins as a stat. His team won twice when he pitched in the World Series. And as a result of that, especially when he was a stopper, I know 5 2/3, but nowadays that's a start. And coming off the kind of loss it was in Game 4, they needed that kind of start from him so bad, and maybe credit Dave Roberts for taking him out what looked like a little early, right? I mean, everyone's killing Tampa Bay right now because of Snell, but they took Kershaw out, even by Kershaw standards, maybe a little early, but it worked, and maybe he had been left in too long in the past, right? But the fact is, Koufax was a big game pitcher, as was Drysdale. They won World Series with those guys. Valenzuela was a big game pitcher. They won a World Series in '81 with him. Oral Hershiser, big game pitcher. They won largely because of those guys. Kershaw hadn't been, so they hadn't won. He was this World Series, so they did. And now he enters. Jeff, you were saying, oh, that's actually great company. But actually, Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain, for all their postseason failure, did win twice. Kershaw is now in the Peyton Manning, Wilt Chamberlain conversation in baseball. That is tough to make the argument he's the greatest of all time, but he is in that conversation. And, his name will get brought up, even if he doesn't win the argument, and easy to make the argument that he's the greatest regular season pitcher of all time as a starter, who now has a World Series championship.
Well, listen, I would say this to you. He's not a choker. I don't think that we can call him that anymore. I think we can get rid of that, from baseball's vernacular. The bottom line is that the guy showed up in 2 World Series games and all the pressure in the world was on him Game 1 and Game 5, and he handled his business. Give credit where credit is due. Not only that, it wasn't his only stellar performances in postseason. He just had a few too many that were not stellar. He's got a career 2.43 ERA in the regular season, but in the postseason, it's over 4.
2.43 is the best of all time.
That's right.
Of all time since the dead ball era.
So the bottom line is that we know how special he is. I think that, he really would have erased a lot of demons, eradicated them forever, if he had to show up in a Game 7 and he showed up and showed out. But even that, in all likelihood, would have been in relief duty. In the end, when he was called upon to show up in the World Series, with those cardiac kids kind of team in the Tampa Bay Rays, and he handled his business in Game 1, he handled it again in Game 5, I don't think we'll ever look at Clayton Kershaw the same again in terms of postseason. We won't sit up there and say the pressure's on you not to choke. You'll either show up and perform well or you won't. But what won't be said about him is that, just because it's the postseason, pressure breaks
he couldn't
pipes
win the big
and
one.
pressure
That one's
breaks
off
Clayton
now.
Kershaw.
Yeah.
You couldn't win the big one. That's not going.
Are we like one big happy family right now? I feel like you guys just need to give each other a big hug because Max is being all positive about Clayton Kershaw and Stephen A's agreeing with him. And this is the same week that Max came out and actually admitted he was wrong about something. This seems like a step forward in First Take history. I'm really enjoying being a big part of this.
Thank you for highlighting that, Jeff.
There were a lot of things. You're welcome. You're welcome. There were a lot of things to take away from last night that were great. But to me, the moment that I appreciated the most, knowing the kind of person he is, and I don't say this about athletes a lot because we don't really know them. Clayton Kershaw is literally the guy who goes to Africa and builds houses and schools for children there. Clayton Kershaw is a good human being. And to see him coming out of that Dodgers bullpen last night with just this smile on his face of joy, this relief, the monkey off his back, the weight off his shoulders, and pointing to the sky and knowing that not only could he call himself a world champion now, but wherever he goes the rest of his life, He can take that big left hand of his, put it on a table, and it's going to make a loud noise because the ring is going to be clinking on that table. For Clayton Kershaw to have that and to know that Stephen A. Smith will never use the word choker with him again, that Max Kellerman will give him credit.
I never did, Jeff. That was Max. I never said that about Clayton Kershaw.
I'm glad, but Jeff, I'm so glad.
I never felt that way.
Jeff, I'm so glad you talked about what kind of person he is. I rooted so hard for Clayton Kershaw throughout his career. First of all, because you think you might be watching the greatest who ever did it. You know, and by the way, I said he had the lowest ERA of all time. He also has the lowest starting pitchers adjusted ERA of all time, which adjusts for the different eras. So it's not even apples to oranges, apples to apples. He's the best ever in the regular season. And because you brought that up, I remember I was on the radio in L.A. This man's going to Africa to dig wells to bring people water. Like, he's a good dude. If anything, I think his problems in the postseason, it's not even about being left in too long and all that stuff. He wanted it too bad. He was so wound tight in those big moments because he wanted it so bad. And so if you followed his career, you wanted it for him. But, Jeff, I did call him a choker because, and I took no pleasure in it, because how many times I had to come on the air the next day and be like, okay, he didn't do it again, but this time he did it. 2 starts, and especially had he closed it out in Game 4, Game 5, it wouldn't have been as good. The fact that he had to play stopper after a deflating, demoralizing loss that makes it feel like the baseball gods want Tampa to win, that he goes out there and pitches like that, and credit Dave Roberts, the move he made by taking Kershaw out. Which way do we want it? You can't leave him in too long. But when he took him out, he faced criticism just like Cash did for taking Snell out, right, in the moment. But it worked. Credit them both, and it's just a feel-good story. There's no other way to put it.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.